Hello, welcome to Star Wars Spelt Out. This is your host Josh Chapman speaking, and today we're back from holiday. We had a week off last week. I was sunning myself in Queensland, having a lovely time, and now I'm back home in the home studio, and we're in for a treat today. Into such a treat. We've had relatives and friends and amateurs and people starting podcasts and people who've kind of been on a little bit, but it's time to bring in the big guns. It's time to bring in people who actually know what they're doing. My guest here, she isn't podcasting on the regular at the moment, but to me, she'll always be royalty. It's Tracy Gardner. Hi, Tracy.
What an intro. Thank you. Hello.
How's things?
They're good. They're good. I'm excited to finally be on the show. We've been talking about it for ages, so.
We have. And the funny thing is that we're doing this over Skype, and though Tracy and I actually live in the same city now, she's as Melbourne as kicking a footy on a tram with a flat white now, but she, she's given up the California life and living the Melbourne lifestyle, but she's a cool inner city girl, and I'm a suburban chump, so we kind of decided that it was a bit too tricky to expect Tracy to schlep all the way over to the studio in the middle of peak hour, especially since she doesn't own a car or do you have a license in Australia? I don't know.
I think I'm allowed to drive for a little while on an international, but the other side of the road thing is just a little too tricky for me.
Yeah, it can be a bit of a mind mess. When I lived in England, because England's the same as Australia, but then if anywhere outside of England, if you went to Spain or France or anywhere, it would be on the other side, and you'd hire a car and all the transmissions on the wrong side, and it's just a completely scary prospect, basically. So we decided just to do this over Skype instead. It's a bit easier. Everybody can get comfortable, sit on their couches and, and relax. And then, Tracy doesn't have to contend with a 3-year-old running around in the background wondering who the new person is. So you're not retired from podcasting. You've actually got something cooking. Can you actually sizzle any of that at the moment, or is it still very much in the works?
I have something in the works. I can't say too much yet because we still have yet to record a pilot and sort of talk to our producers back in LA. I will say that the plan is to be doing something with someone here that works in the same industry as me, but who also happens to be a very big nerd. So the plan is to kind of do something that intersects hospitality and like a passion for comic books and Star Wars and movies. And so, yeah. So
awesome. So is that somebody who was a fan of your work on Rebel Grrrl, or someone who you just struck up a conversation with and turned out you like the same stuff? Or
it turned out to be a colleague who likes the same stuff as me and that has kind of like a similar sense of humor. And I just realized I had a friend back in LA asking me to come up and produce a podcast, and that was about a month ago. And I'm just kind of like, I don't know, flat out. So I haven't really had like a good idea in a while. I'm just kind of taking a break from being smart. But then I don't know, it just clicked with me. So hopefully it moves forward, and it in my mind it'll be a pretty cool idea if we can get it off the ground. So yeah, exciting stuff.
But when you sort of start talking about, producers and all that kind of stuff, you go, it's just not some rinky-dinky thing, dude in his bedroom like me. It's a little bit more professional, and that sounds great. That sounds really exciting. Well, hopefully this will give you, a little bit more juice. You go like, oh man, I've missed this talking and going into nerdy stuff and all that kind of thing. So I usually just sort of start off with a pretty general question. How are you feeling about Star Wars at the moment?
I'm really optimistic. I'm incredibly excited about the prospect of a live action TV show because I feel like that's something that's been tossed around sort of like the Star Wars zeitgeist for so long. In fact, before Disney took over, there was so many rumors that there was something called Star Wars Underworld in the works, which was going to be live action. And that was like 8 years ago. So
yeah, well, they'd talked about that they were going to shoot it in Australia because they shot episode 2 and 3 here, and then there was all this studio space, and that was when George was still running it, and they had the ties with Fox, and it's the Fox Studios, and they were they'd talked about that they'd done scripts and it was all kind of done, and then it just sort of faded away into nothing, and whether George had decided he didn't want to commit any longer or the Disney thing kind of came into it. But
Yeah.
So there's a little bit they sort of talked about quite recently about the Jon Favreau one that he's running it now, and they were saying, oh, it's going to cost $100 million and it's going to be 10 episodes and it's going to be Mandalorians, of course, because it's Jon Favreau. He loves Mandalorians. Yeah, I mean, it sounds interesting to me. I don't get all sort of creamy for Mandalorians like some people do, but anything that's more Star Wars is pretty exciting. Is that kind of where you thought they'd go?
You know, I would actually be really, really surprised if they focus just on Mandalorians. I know that he's a big fan of them, but I have a feeling it's going to be a lot more. I don't think we're going to know what's going to happen. At this point, I don't think Disney has really, like, and everyone involved in the creative aspect of these projects, I think we've been surprised every time. So I'm kind of at the point where I don't think any of our expectations are going to be right.
Yep.
I do like Jon Favreau just as a director and even as an actor. I think he's just I think he's a good creative.
I just remember him as the guy who wanted to fight for Monica on Friends. I don't know if you watched Friends when he was like Monica's boyfriend on Friends for a while.
I've never seen Friends.
Oh wow, there you go. Well, I won't dig into that reference anymore. Then it'll be completely lost on you.
It's pretty
there
bad.
You go. So I think I was that, and The Simpsons. Is it The Simpsons as well? You haven't seen? I think Adam, your fiance, was complaining that you hadn't seen The Simpsons as well.
I didn't realize that was such a big deal to Australians, but yeah, I've never.
Friends just ran. They just in Australia because we get stuff so late, and it's such a big deal to get stuff from America, especially years ago when there was no internet. So when Friends was like, Friends is coming, get ready for Friends, and they would put it on the the prime time slot, and basically and it just ran and ran and ran and ran and ran and ran. So most Australians know Friends pretty well, but so we all got sucked into it. You didn't miss much. It's got some good gags, but moving on, that's okay. So live action stuff obviously coming up. Is the Clone Wars? Are you a Clone Wars person? Does that coming back interest you, or are you kind of like, oh, I'm just glad it's back for people who like it?
I absolutely love arcs in the Clone Wars. I watched it which is the way I recommend to watch it. I know not everyone's going to agree with this. I watch it by the arc. I actually think season 5 of the Clone Wars is some of the best Star Wars. Like I nerded out.
Was it the Netflix one?
What was that?
Was it the Netflix, the one that sort of got finished up on Netflix, season 5?
I think didn't season 5 actually? Now I can't remember. I thought it was season 6.
I can't remember either. Oh, whatever the last one was. Yeah. Sorry, I wasn't sure if 5 was the last one.
5 was when Ahsoka leaves the Jedi Order.
Yep.
That was really groundbreaking to me, and I thought that the whole participation with women fans in that whole era was really cool. I actually wrote about it a lot in graduate school. So yeah, I'm actually really excited for Clone Wars to come back. I love Clone Wars.
Do you think any character in Star Wars from a fan's perspective has gone from loathed to loved as much as Ahsoka?
Not that I can really think. I mean, I guess lately with Jar Jar, we're getting finally this 2020 hindsight where people are realizing that maybe we should have,
been nicer.
Yeah, we'll just cut the character some slack. I mean, I didn't know the character was bad until angry, older men told me he was bad. And but I was a kid, and the character was intended for kids. So I'm kind of relieved to see a little bit of.
There's a lot of this has come up the other day. I had my brother on the other day, and we were talking about prequels. He's a couple of years younger than me, but and he has the criticisms of it that a lot of people do and whatever. But he's still a big fan of it, and we were sort of talking about just the general prequel love that sort of all the 10-year-olds, the 8-year-olds are all in their sort of late 20s, early 30s now, and are really giving it its dues. I think there's a lot of prequel love. I think we'll get a lot of that coming up next year as well with Celebration. There's the anniversary of Phantom Menace as well.
Yeah.
Ahsoka, the Ahsoka arc. So did you follow her in Rebels as well? Were you happy to see her back in Rebels? Did you feel like her story was kind of done and she didn't need to come back? Or
I was frustrated with the way that I do respect Dave Filoni. I think he has some great storytelling prowess. However, I just wish that they would have given the fans answers. Did she die or did she not die? If she's dead, let her be dead and let us have some closure. If she's not dead, then like tell us what she's doing. That really frustrated me. I was so tired of like the sort of stringing the fans along. To me, it was almost bad storytelling. Like just give us an answer.
It was sort of like they couldn't really. They wanted to have their cake and eat it too, where they were basically like, "We want to, hey, here's Ahsoka, get excited, it's Ahsoka," but we're not going to commit to having her in the show all the time because basically, if we have somebody with her abilities, it's kind of going to negate Kanan and Ezra because they're not as skillful as she is, basically. So they kind of
Yeah.
had to have excuses for her to not being involved and being on the periphery of the story, I suppose. When you're kind of just going, "Oh, I'd really just like her to be, really." In the story, and and I guess it's kind of like, well, if you do that and then it clashes with, it's so close to people like Luke Skywalker being in it and going that, hey, that there's this Jedi Knight who was around, or she's basically a Jedi Knight, and no one tends to mention it to the guy who can use the Force all of a sudden. And yeah, it's kind of dancing around. I mean, they're very aware of those inconsistencies and they just sort of dance around them a little bit, I suppose.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest. I don't hate Rebels. I love what it did for younger fans. I think it created a lot of new Star Wars fans. I personally didn't like it, and I'm excited for Clone Wars to be back. But now having Clone Wars back, it makes me wonder why we even needed Rebels at all.
Yeah, it's a bit of a funny one, wasn't it? That they kind of killed off Clone Wars when the sale was done, and they kind of assumed that story was done, and then Rebels, slightly filled that gap. But it was such a again, it was the thing of trying to tell a story, but yet impacting the bigger story. I always kind of felt like I think they really missed a trick, not in, tying it close to stuff like Rogue One. Like you really could have had like Cassian Andor in there and Krennic and those really, really interesting Rogue One characters. I think it really would have boosted the show, but I think they didn't really feel like they wanted to touch too closely.
Yeah, I could see that. But then when they did, they went, in my opinion, way too far. Like, it was like they backed off and they didn't commit. But then when they committed, to me, it was a little bit too incestuous. Like for me, there was no reason for Ezra to be on Tatooine. Like I just
Yes.
didn't,
Oh,
I
for
didn't
sure.
enjoy that. Like, and him
Well,
meeting
even
Obi-Wan.
oh, for sure, and to have Princess Leia in there as well, it just seemed, yeah, a little on the nose. Even Lando as well, I kind of felt like they probably could have done without putting Lando in there. But the Obi-Wan thing was weird. And then they completely, you know, once Solo came out and Darth Maul turned up, it just, you had a fantastic way, you brought him back and there was a completely good chance of an open-ended, what's going to happen with Maul now? And they'd already kind of killed him off and put a stamp on it. Well, I mean, they've already killed him off once before, who knows? But yeah, it was a bit of a weird one. Did you coming into Solo so soon after Last Jedi? Were you excited for Solo? Did you feel like you needed to recharge your Star Wars, or are you just always ready for any time Star Wars is back?
I was really ready for Solo. And I really did enjoy the EU, and the Solo trilogy was probably like the AC Crispin one was my favorite, and I just loved the look of it. Like I thought Qi'ra, when I saw some like the first marketing, I thought Qi'ra looked amazing. I liked the aesthetic all the way through Solo. I liked the marketing. I was always excited about it. I was kind of confused as to the lack of like enthusiasm over it. That seemed really strange to me because it seemed like what everyone was asking for, and it could have like kind of fixed that, I guess, I don't know, the pessimism that Star Wars fandom was
Mm-hmm.
experiencing after The Last Jedi. I feel like Solo was the perfect like antidote for that, and no one seemed to really take the bite or like take the medicine, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, it was weird because the thing that the Last Jedi, I love Last Jedi and I love the themes and I love that how it's a story about subverting expectation and don't meet your heroes and it's not going to work out what you think it is, and then it's exactly how people reacted, or a lot of people reacted to it, and had their expectations subverted and had their heroes presented in different ways, and they reacted badly like the people in the film reacted badly, and I think that kind of got lost on a few people. But then you've got Solo, which is this, it is ultimately a safe movie, but I like to look at it more like a slam dunk than a safe movie. It really, gave everybody a lovable character that everybody loves in fun situations. And I don't know, it was funny you're talking about the marketing, because I've heard a lot of people criticize the marketing, but I don't think the film was particularly marketed badly. I think it would have been better to a lot of people that I've had who have been on here and they've talked about it, who are sort of more casual fans, have just gone, I just needed some time to breathe. I usually like my Star Wars spaced out a little bit more. And I think particularly in Australia, the December releases have been really successful, and because it's summertime here and stuff as well.
Mhm.
And so I don't think the film was particularly marketed poorly. I think the release stuff probably hurt it more than the marketing. But again, I don't know. And there's obviously that pocket of people who just sort of felt like they were going to boycott everything regardless. But it's too bad for them.
Yeah.
But it's about to come out on DVD, in a few weeks, and I think it'll get a nice little bump from that.
I mean, are we? I wonder if we're gonna get a sequel if it does well. They built it up so that it could be such a good sequel, and then the boy. And I feel like I don't really think I'm not gonna give the boycott any credit. I'm gonna give I'm gonna give people's either lack of knowledge about it or like maybe a lack of presence in marketing. I'm gonna kind of credit that to why it wasn't like a blockbuster hit. But I would love a sequel.
I think so much stuff gets sequels now. Like it doesn't even, I had my brother on the day and I said I saw Pacific Rim 2 the other day, and that seemed to, which was a perfectly fine movie, but it wasn't Star Wars, and it got a sequel. And then like The Equalizer got a sequel. There's sometimes stuff that just comes out and you go, oh well, that must have just done enough money to warrant a sequel. And I'd love to see them have another crack at it now. I think it would just, if they got a really smooth production run on it, and everybody, the thing that kind of led into it, and people go like, oh, this guy, Alden Ehrenreich, whatever his name is, he's not Han Solo. But nobody I really spoke to who saw the film had any, they all said, yeah, he was great. I had no issue with him. So you have a second bite at the apple, you just go, yep, it's young Han Solo, bring it on. Let's go. Let's go with the journey. Yeah.
Plus, I mean, we got Ron Howard in a Star Wars movie. I mean, like, how much of our childhood did Ron Howard do? Like, that's so exciting.
Yeah, and he was just so excited to be there as well. And he's one of George's guys, so I think it's a good connection to Lucas and his old buddy and things as well. And I'd like to see him just have a proper crack at it. Like from the go, and really be able to have a good run without any dramas, without any problems. And I think we get a really great, and even if you do Lando focused and have Han sort of dip in, just sort of use that as a little kickoff. And I'd love to know what's up with Qi'ra. And she had a really good, where her story kind of got left off as well is really fascinating as well. It'd be really disappointing to not see those characters again, I think.
Yeah, I feel like that people were of two minds about Qi'ra. I talked to people who really liked her, and then there were other people who really didn't. I guess like she just didn't work for them, and I think that's strange because I thought she was probably she might be one of my, like, we've gotten a lot of strong female characters in sort of the new era of Disney, but she's definitely become one of my favorites.
Yeah, she was very interesting. That she's a lot more worldly than Han was, and you kind of go, well, when they catch up again, it's kind of like, oh, look, she's seen some stuff to get where she is. She's been through the ringer, and she's had to, fight her corner, and it's sort of implied that Paul Bettany's character's kind of got some sort of, control over her that she can't really, break out of, and the moment where she kind of takes over at the end, I think it's as much sort of the opportunity presents to herself as also getting herself away from Paul Bettany as well. I think it's sort of like a double thing. I don't think she's completely obsessed with taking over the crime syndicate. I think it's as much as being trying to dictate her life on her own terms, I think, as well.
Yeah, definitely. Plus, it was kind of nice to have her as a contrast to, like, it's not that I don't like Rey. Like, I never want to say anything bad about Rey. I love what Rey has done for this new, like, generation of, like, younger girl fans. But, I mean, we all were being told is that the galaxy is in this, like, terrible place. And everything's really dark. And, there's, like, not a lot of hope. And there's war. And we keep getting these, like, wide-eyed, innocent female characters. And they're, it's not a knock on Ahsoka. It's not a knock on Rey. They exist perfectly, and, like, I see the need for those characters as well. But then to get, like, a grittier female character who actually, like, has had to do some, not great stuff to survive, I thought that was a lot more relatable. And I think Star Wars needs both. And it's not fair that, men have gotten so many different kinds of characters. And then for women, all of our characters have to be like these virtuous, straight arrow leaders. Because
Yep.
that's not real life, and that's not how, you survive in a fucking crime world. So,
Well, that's also what makes someone like Jyn Erso really interesting as well too.
oh
That
yeah.
she is a survivor, and she's had to do some stuff and see some things, and basically is pulled. She ultimately, her story. She ultimately wants to avenge her father more so than the death. She doesn't really give a crap that much about the rebellion, at least to start with.
Hmm.
She's more about going, I want to avenge my father, and that's why I want to go after Director Krennic. And if I have to, spoil his day by blowing up his Death Star, getting his Death Star plans, this is the way I'll do it. It would be good. It's a shame that I think it served the movie perfectly well. What happened to Jyn Erso at the end, that she sort of sacrificed herself, but it would be really good to see more adventures of what she was up to in between. They've touched on a little bit on the Forces of Destiny stuff, but obviously that's for little children, so it's sort of she
Yeah.
saves a little alien who's being bullied or something like that. But I think the Jyn Erso adventures. I think with Rey, talking about the sort of the wide-eyed. I mean, she's obviously the very similar to Luke Skywalker as well. So they both at least sort of start in this same point of, the wide-eyed, person who's sort of thrust into this adventure. But I think what makes Rey not more interesting than Luke, but different to Luke, is obviously legacy. That, Luke Skywalker obviously is the son of Anakin Skywalker, this great Jedi who becomes Darth Vader. And the thing that makes Rey a lot more interesting, especially in Last Jedi, is that, she starts as this preconceived thing that the reasons that she has these powers and stuff, and a lot of people did, was that she must come from this bloodline and that she's special, and she kind of hangs her hat on that to start with. And then when she's faced with the truth that she's just, she's on her own, her heritage doesn't mean anything, it's sort of up to her, that makes her a more interesting character going forward.
Yeah, I don't. Do you really think that she's no one? Are you on the side of everyone who thinks that he was not lying?
I tend to think so. I tend to think that I don't think he knows. I think he just searches through her memories, and that she's basically just gone. She's convinced herself that she must be from somewhere, because she doesn't want to accept the truth, because it just means that she's not special. And I think she's sort of, before she even realizes that she has abilities, she's sort of going, well, I have to stay on this planet because one day my parents are going to come here, and I have to have something that's going to keep me going, because otherwise what am I even doing here? I might as well just throw myself off a cliff or something, because what's the point even going on? So she's sort of built in her mind that my family will come back because that's basically the reason to survive.
Right. Yeah.
And then when she realizes that she can get, even when she gets off planet, she's still, Han's saying, "Hey, you can have a job. You can come with me." She's going, "Oh no, I've got to get back. I've got to go back to there," because she's kind of not conditioned herself, but her reason for existing and surviving is that there's some light at the end of the tunnel. So, though I think deep down, I think Maz Kanata says to her, that they're never coming back. You know deep down that that's the truth. So I think that when she accepts that they're not coming back, which she kind of does, she kind of goes, well, I've got these abilities now, so therefore I must have these abilities because they are somebody. They might not come back, but they are somebody. And that's the next kind of lie that she tells herself, I suppose, in order to accept that, she's got these new scary powers now. She's thrown into this thing that she doesn't really understand. So I think Kylo basically just digs into her head and goes, you already know the truth. You're just basically kidding yourself here. And obviously he's doing it to get her to trust her and go on his side. But I don't think he has any information that anybody else has. But I could be wrong. I mean, do you want to see... do you want to see Rey in Episode 9 kind of like Luke in Return of the Jedi, like sort of a couple of years down the track, confident, knows her craft, running things, or do you want to see her closer to where she is at Last Jedi, kind of feeling things out?
I don't know how to really have an opinion anymore, because I really wanted her to be someone. I was on that. And then when she wasn't, the first time I saw The Last Jedi, I was really unhappy with the movie. And then watching it a second, third, fourth, fifth time in theaters, I realized that I was really wrong. And that was, even though my fan expectation was oh, I wanted to be a legacy, and I wanted to find her parents, and I had a lot of personal investment in that. It was
Yep.
better. It was better storytelling for her to not be anyone, and it's better. It's a better tie to the Force Awakens and Maz Kanata. But so I guess so. That being said, I could go either way in episode 9. I honestly have a lot of trust in the story that Rian Johnson set up and with what J.J. Abrams, with what they're doing right now in the writing of Star Wars. I've realized that my expectations aren't always for the best of the story. So
Yep.
either way, I'll be happy because I really enjoy Rey as a character.
But that's like it's interesting that you said, because I was at the premiere for Last Jedi with you as
Mm-hmm.
well. We caught up a little bit, and you were on Steele's reaction thing, and it was obvious that you'd sort of had reservations and things as well. But being the professional you are, you're kind of finding the light things as well. And I think everybody who came out of it the first time were a bit sort of like, oh geez, like what did we just watch here? Like what is
Oh
this?
yeah.
And it was, and I think that that's that's a result of interesting, challenging filmmaking, especially in a space movie with lasers and things as well, to really get you to think and challenge your expectations. And I think a lot of the negative reaction to Last Jedi is that people did walk out of that thing and be like, F that movie, I'm
Mm-hmm.
never going back, I don't want to know about it. And I had my cousin Glyn on a few weeks ago, actually probably a few months ago now, and he's a couple of years older than me, and he got me into Star Wars. The reason I'm into Star Wars, and a lot of my cousins and relatives are, is he was big Star Wars, and he hated The Last Jedi, and he didn't. He just said the story just didn't resonate, and he hasn't gone back. And it was really that thing, and we had a really great discussion. It wasn't a negative thing. He just said, I just sort of came out and I didn't feel that thing that I feel when I walk out of a Star Wars movie.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of it, he's going, I think I'll go back and watch it. I think I'll go back and check it out a couple more times. And because I think Star Wars movies, especially legacy, saga films, they sit with you, they live with you, they become, especially when you're a big fan like we are, they become part of your life and your DNA, and you put them on. And I think for a lot of people to have a reaction where they don't just come out completely charged, I think that's why we got some of the reactions that we have.
Mm-hmm. Well, it ended on such a somber note. I mean, it ended on it ends on like a really sad spot. I mean, basically all of the resistance is these couple people that are on the Falcon, and the resistance is gone. And a lot of what we think about in terms of Star Wars, especially with nostalgia, when we watch Star Wars through this lens of nostalgia, we're so used to the resistance winning or the rebels winning.
Yeah, but we're also used to knowing what happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
So do you think if you had been old enough to go see, if you'd been your age now in 1980 and you went and saw Empire Strikes Back for the first time, do you think you would have felt that similar thing coming out of Empire for the first time, after seeing Star Wars, which is such a happy ending, everybody's cheering, and then all of a sudden it's Empire Strikes Back, it's bad times, Han's gone, Luke's lost his hand, Darth Vader is Luke's father. Do you think you would have had those similar reactions first time around? Something so shocking?
Yeah, of course. And a lot of people did. I mean, now we all look back and think that was the best Star Wars movie, but that was not the sentiment at the time. People were shocked.
No.
They had a lot of feelings. I've read reviews of people saying, "Oh, it was too dark. It was too this," and it wasn't, like the first one. And a lot of people hated Return of the Jedi as well. I mean, there was a lot.
That's right.
There was so much backlash against the Return of the Jedi being like too cutesy and too family friendly. And I mean, I think that this is a phase and it's a symptom of the internet. And I do feel bad for the people who didn't watch it again, because I think by the third time, I realized how important the movie was, and I saw what they were doing with some of the storytelling, and I saw some of the things that at first didn't really seem like they made sense, and they were actually very well explained.
Yeah, I've watched it with the Rian Johnson's commentary, and I'm not sure if it's the commentary or the documentary or somewhere else, where he sort of just says, I laid out all the characters and I basically said, how does this character define themselves, or what is the expectation around this character? And I'm basically going to subvert that expectation on every single character of what they think, from Poe to Luke, probably Leia not so much, but Luke and Rey and Finn and Kylo as well, and really sort of flip things on their heads, and to be able to sort of pull that off in a movie and in a narrative, it's quite a skill, really. And I think that the reaction, and I think Rian Johnson's obviously copped a lot of crap, which is awful for him, but he's handled it with a smile,
Mm-hmm.
and I think. I don't want to speak for him. I don't know him, obviously, but I think that I think every time somebody goes after him and criticizes him, I think he kind of goes, I kind of got to them, one way or another. That the fact I got that reaction means that the what I was trying to do is actually successful. So I actually don't feel that bad. I could do without the abuse, but the fact that I'm getting a reaction means that the story has affected people in a way.
Well, I was talking to a friend the other day who isn't really quite as involved in the internet, but he's seen a couple of the YouTube reactions and just kind of like the whiny fanboy archetype. And the way that I feel like the creators are seeing it right now is it's almost like clearing out a bar. Like when you get people out because they really shouldn't be there and they think it's like their living room and they're kind of too comfortable, but they're not exactly the clientele you want. And that's how I feel like it is with some of the the boys in Star Wars. And it's not all of them, but there is a subset. And if you ask any woman who's liked Star Wars since she was a little girl, we will tell you that we've always known these guys were there. They've always been there. I've met them at every celebration. I've met them, in every Comic-Con, every like group, like nerd thing I've ever participated in.
Yep.
You get that small percentage of the guys who just think it's theirs. They think Star Wars is for them and no one else can touch their toys. And so Rian Johnson, a little bit, I feel like he's kind of cheeky about that. And he's like, no, this isn't yours.
No, exactly. And I mean, I being a straight white guy into Star Wars, and I think Steele's touched on it before, is going, I had the blinkers on it. Never really affected my life. I never came across it. I never had to deal with it. I certainly wasn't somebody who did that. I've always tried to, take everybody's fandom on their merits, whether they're into it a little. I was always happy if people wanted to be into Star Wars. I didn't really care. I have friends who are into it, but I don't have hardcore fans. But the sort of community of friends that we've built out now, it's great having people who are really into it. You can talk about it, nerdily like we are now. Mm-hmm. So it was only until I sort of got exposure, obviously to the internet and having friends who spoke about their experiences and things, that your eyes kind of open and things. And, some people don't want to know about it or don't like what they have reflecting back at them, I think, which obviously happens a lot as well. So, my daughter is 3 now and I've been pushing Star Wars on her a little bit. And she loves Rey and she loves Leia and she loves her Forces of Destinies and she loves Ewoks and stuff. And I think that it's, not to get too cheesy, but I think it's because of fans like yourself and other people we know who sort of had to deal with the garbage. Mm-hmm. That means that it'll be more likely that she'll grow up, and it will be less questioned. There'll be less issues and things. And I think that's really, really great. Hopefully that if some boy tells her that Star Wars isn't for her, that she can tell him where to go. And, she's got a lot of fantastic characters that she can turn to. I don't think it can even be argued like that anymore.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the girls in Star Wars, we get really protective of that because for us, like, I have a younger niece and we used to get a lot of younger, I don't know how I feel about their parents letting them listen to Rebel Grrrl, but we did get a lot of like younger girls writing into Rebel Grrrl. And we had a lot of girls from middle school aged telling us that, that toxicity does bleed into real life. And we would get these really heartfelt letters from little girls, our young women, I guess, because middle school, you're a young woman at that point, saying some of the backlash that they got from boys at school and some of the things that they were told. And we've tried to be like a really positive force. And like you said, like, so that, they do know where to tell those guys to like shove it because because like we're here and we've always been here. And the women characters in Star Wars are just as good as the male characters. And they're just as good in terms of writing. They're not, an agenda. And that's what's kind of sad is it's like telling someone that their presence is an agenda is inherently like a really crappy thing to say. Like that's a crappy thing to tell someone. So, yeah.
It's it's fantastic that you have a character like Rey who is the the lead and the story is about her, but at the same time it's sort of like, well, it'd be nice if you didn't have to point to she has to be the Luke Skywalker in order for this message to get across as well. Like it'd be nice that it was just accepted that all the characters in it. It's great that she's there, but I mean my experience and the with sort of women and fandom and stuff is that they love the thing that they love harder than most guys ever do, when they, whether that's Star Wars or whether it's anything else, it's a lot of the women I know who are really into something just love it, so much that it's just insane to feel that could even be put into question. Really, it's ridiculous. It does fall a little bit, I think, in in some cases in stuff like sport as well. If people question, someone barracks for the football team, or they don't barrack as much, or that's not their team, or they don't know as much, and things like that. I think it's again that sort of dude protection of something that it's mine and no one can like it as much as I can. But I think we're getting there. I think we're getting there slowly.
And I do think I'm trying to be really optimistic. To be honest, part of the reason I did take a break from podcasting is I've loved this for so long, and I didn't enjoy that this culture was making me not making me not love it, but almost putting like a damper on something that's always sort of been a source of positivity in my life. But now that I'm watching these people kind of run themselves to ground and seeing the way that the creators are just barreling through, and I do have a lot of faith in the people at Disney. I know their actions aren't always perfect, but their message has always kind of been like, we're not going to tolerate this. I mean, when there was protests at Disneyland about Gay Day, there was a stand up to that. Like, there's always been sort of like a look, we support everyone, we believe in everyone type mentality. I mean, at least recently. I know that, like I said, I know Disney's messed up a lot, but to see the creators kind of just tell these like man babies to just shut up has been kind of nice.
Yeah, and I think organisations getting are much better than that. And we obviously had the marriage equality plebiscite in Australia at the end of last year, and there are a lot of big organisations like the AFL, which is the big football league here.
Yeah,
they came out and basically said, "Yep, we completely support this. We're on board." And people got their nose bent in shape. And my football club Essendon came out and said, "We support completely as well." And there were people on the message board saying, and I just said, well, there are no openly gay AFL players, but, we have a women's league as well, which has heaps of openly gay players. You're going to go tell your team's women representative that they don't matter and things as well. So I think the tide is shifting, but I mean, you're always going to have this little corner of people who are going to yell no matter what. And I think it's eventually, the weight shifts so much that they just can be overdoing their own thing. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
So how are you feeling about Carrie Fisher being in episode 9?
I think that was the best possible decision. I thought that was such a, I guess, honorable move on their part. And I love that they got Billie Lourd's blessing, and that, it's just a good thing. And I like that they were really open too, that they had other options. Like, okay, and they really sat down and deliberated. Like, do we recast? Do we use CGI? Or do we honor her in the most organic way possible? And yeah, I thought that was really cool. I loved the transparency of the message from a company that hasn't been very transparent recently.
Yeah, and it was good to get it out of the way as well. Like, you wouldn't have wanted, even with to a lesser degree, having Mark Hamill coming back, but rather than just having people debate and make up nonsense and clickbaits and all this sort of, subterfuge around what's happening and people just making up things, and it's really good that they can just say, yep, this is what we're doing. I mean, obviously it helps that they've probably gone back through whatever they had shot of Carrie and gone, okay, well, we can use this here, we can use these lines here, we can use this scene here. We obviously don't know how that's going to be worked, whether it's, flashbacks or holograms or scenes that just work if you just, she's saying certain lines and they flip a certain way. I think originally they'd said that it was just Force Awakens, but I had read that they're using Last Jedi footage as well now.
Yeah.
Which makes total sense because she was in Last Jedi much more. There must be much more footage of her from Last Jedi.
Yeah.
And, I don't know how you feel, but I don't mind taking a performance of her sort of saying something in a situation or in a room and kind of cutting her out and putting her out somewhere else, as long as it's her speaking her words and stuff. Do you want to sort of go, no, we have to sort of use the scene as it was, or do you not really mind?
I don't know. I think they'll figure out a way to make it seamless. I mean, you don't want to sort of have a floating head on. Yeah, they're gonna take it seriously, and I didn't mind Rogue One. I thought Tarkin looked amazing, and that I'm sure in the editing process that was tricky. and even in terms of like actors sort of acting around that. But I mean, I know it's gonna sound like a really cliche, but if they could figure out how to do all that with CGI in the prequels, like they can figure out how to do it in episode 9. So like
Yeah, that's right.
they'll be able to, even though it's not CGI, but it's still going to be like an editing sort of challenge. But I think they can do it.
Yeah, like it's also as much a writing challenge as an editing challenge as well. And we'll never sort of know what the plans. Well, it's kind of weird though, because they had Colin Trevorrow was going to do episode 9, and then he was sort of cast aside, and they couldn't really make the scripts work, and for whatever reason. And then I think JJ came on after Carrie had passed away anyway. So it's not as if they had a solid plan for what Leia was doing anyway. So I think in that case, the fact that JJ came on after the fact Carrie had passed, at least he can say, okay, well, we can work our story around this. We don't have to be beholden to what had been planned for Leia's character, before, whatever it was going to be, one way or the other. So, yeah, it was strange because it was sad seeing her in episode 8, but it didn't feel, because it felt like a complete performance. There wasn't sort of any issues and things. And obviously, I mean, I thought when they blew the ship up, I thought she was done then, but that wasn't the case. I don't know how you felt at the time, but I was surprised.
I thought that was going to be the end of her, because that was sort of the rumor that we had been hearing, was that's. I do actually think that at some point that would have been the end of her, but that I think maybe with like sort of the progression, they decided to keep around, sort of like what they did with Poe, because I had read like pretty credible sources say that she was going to die in an attack at the beginning, or at least be like completely immobilized at the beginning. And then what we thought was going to happen, because obviously working for making Star Wars, we got a lot of script treatments and a lot of sources very early in the game, and the entire plan was that she was going to like go into a coma at the beginning of the movie, that her ship was going to get blown up, and then the speculation was that she was going to go into the coma and just never wake up. So the fact that she woke up, I think, was really cool. I think that was one last like triumphant Leia moment that they gave us, and I really like that, because that would have been unsatisfying.
Yeah, it would have really stung. And I think even if Carrie was still alive, that would have just been, she sort of just drifted off. It would have been, that doesn't sound like how Princess Leia would go out. And I think it might have been a bit much to get rid of Luke and Leia in the same film. But obviously Leia being in a coma is the plot device to further Poe's story, because otherwise if Leia's there, Poe doesn't question what's going on. He doesn't learn any lessons and things as well. I mean, that's the annoying thing about when people criticize Admiral Holdo for what for her character. And I think she's a perfect character to create that tension. She is there to create tension. She is there to create a situation where Poe has to learn a lesson. You don't know what's going to happen. All these people going, oh well, why didn't they just have Admiral Akbar do it? It's like, well, if Admiral Akbar's running things, they just sit there and do whatever Admiral Akbar says, and there's no tension. There's it's just death on film. They all just sit around going, all right, well, I guess we'll just do what you want to do, and away we go. And, I thought Holdo was a great foil for Poe, that he basically questioned everything, that he literally says, oh, that's not what I expected. And when Leia is in a coma, and they sort of go, well, the chain of command is quite obvious here, and he basically looks like he's going to step up and go, okay, everybody, I'm in charge now. And it's like, well, no, idiot, sit down. You're way down the chain here. So
he looked like a really disappointed actor at like the Academy Awards.
Yeah, like he was, like they're just about to read out his name. He'd already started straightening his tie, basically, and pulling out his acceptance speech.
Yeah, exactly.
So episode 9, this is a big gap for, this is the big Star Wars gap. But you're saying before how you did a lot of work with making Star Wars and things. Are you still a spoiler chaser, or now that you're kind of less involved, you're going to sit back and wait it out?
I'm not as heavily involved in spoilers as I was. The Force Awakens, I pretty much knew the whole film before it came out. I felt like I knew I felt like it was like reading a book and then watching the movie for the book that I had read. That's how I felt about The Force Awakens in the terms of like how much I knew about that movie.
Wow.
The Last Jedi, I felt similarly to Rogue One. I knew pretty much everything about Rogue One. I still loved it, but I went into The Last Jedi a little bit more in the dark because I had moved to Australia, really decided to kind of take a break and focus on like my career here. And going into The Last Jedi not knowing as much was a really nice experience. Same with Solo.
Yep.
So I think with episode 9, I'm gonna kind of like write it in the middle. I'll still read all the spoilers. I'll still try to like know what's going on. But if I don't know every little thing, that's not gonna be like it's not gonna
ruin your day.
I don't know. So yeah, it's just I don't know.
Yeah, I've always been sort of. I'll watch the trailers. I've never been a spoiler chaser. I always kind of like to sort of go in clean and stuff. But I obviously wasn't, making Star Wars guys, they're right in the trenches of it with information and things coming. And I think if I was in a situation where that was coming at me every day, I think I would probably cave. Like it's easy just to not click on a link, and just go, all right, I'll just move on and get on with my day. But I feel like if you were sort of in the newsroom, so to speak, it might be a little bit harder to avoid.
Well, I have the like devastating story that kind of got me into spoilers because like, okay, whatever. Where it would have been a year and a half before The Force Awakens even came out, or it might even be longer than that. We had already kind of gotten into the spoiler game, and my ex was one of the co-hosts of Now This Is Podcasting, and he had gotten a really good source.
Is that Randy?
Yeah. So Randy and I, Randy and I lived together, and with no
I didn't know that.
warning or anything, I was like in my room getting ready. Yeah, like we had the studio and everything together, and I'm in my room like getting ready for work or whatever, and he just bursts in the door looking down at his phone and goes, "Han dies."
Oh no!
And I was just like, wait, what? I was like, you have to be kidding me. He goes, yeah. Han dies, his son kills him, his son's gonna be the bad guy, like all like just goes off, and this is like so ahead in the game, and so I'm just like, okay, well then now I'm into spoilers because and it
just give me everything, all right, just pile the misery on.
And it just ruined my day because I couldn't tell anyone, so I had to go to work just in this really pissy mood, knowing that like my favorite Star Wars character and like my childhood crush is like dead and like devastated. It was like reading a really sad part in a book and having like no one to talk to about it. And so that was kind of like my foray into Star like spoilers. I was like, okay, just lay them on me.
I mean, I suspect I didn't know that was going to happen going in, but I was pretty sure that it was, just because I didn't think Harrison Ford would come back. I thought that he'd just go, I'll give you one, and then I want out, I didn't think he would have signed up for 3 films and things as well. So I was I didn't know the way it would happen. I didn't know who Kylo Ren was going in or anything like that. I just was like, well, I think if they get the chance to kill off Han, I think that they'll do it because, Harrison's, he'll do one. Like I've said this before in another pod, I think that's why he was so sort of proactive on Solo and the film, and like he was quite happy to promote Alden Ehrenreich and all that kind of stuff, because he can just say, you know what, you can direct all your Han Solo questions over there now. There's your Han Solo. I can just get back to flying my plane and enjoy my autumn years, and I don't have to ask any more questions about Han Solo anymore. But I mean, it's amazing that he came back.
Yeah.
Considering, if you know the history of Harrison Ford, like it's amazing that he came back with a smile on his face and he was loving it. So, Adam, your fiance is a bit of a cosplayer as well. You're a cosplayer back in the day as well. Have you cosplayed of any of the? I know you used to. Was it Jania Solo? You used to cosplay Jania Solo, wasn't it?
Yeah, I do a Jaina Solo, which is pretty fun.
Jaina Solo.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
So I was going to ask, is when she was no longer canon anymore, did that was that a little bit crushing, or did you just go like, oh, whatevs?
No, because Mara Jade was my first like cosplay that really, got me into cosplaying, because I've always loved that character. And then a coworker actually was the reason I started cosplaying, because I like started at a new job, and he's like, you look like this character from Star Wars, Mara Jade. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to Comic-Con in a couple weeks. I should cosplay that. So basically, 2 of the characters that I really, really liked in Star Wars are no longer canon, but you know what? They still have their place. I know I like the EU for what it is. There's all this talk going around that Mara Jade could come back into the canon. I'm so open for that. I don't know that. I think Jaina could come back too. I think that they could both find a place. Like if we see like Jaina in the Resistance or in the Rebellion, she doesn't have to be Han and Leia's daughter. She could be just, a really cool fighter. I think that both of these women.
That's a really interesting way of doing it.
Actually. Yeah, I would love that, because I mean Thrawn was way different. Like Thrawn wasn't tied to his associations. You know, we had
Yeah, they
him.
completely moved him in time as well, didn't they?
Yeah.
They just, chucked him forward. Yeah, because they were sort of talking about going, when they cast Kerry Russell in episode 9, like, it's Mara Jade. There's got to be Mara Jade. She's got curly hair.
Yeah,
but it's like, I don't think so. But it would be good because I had Kat's brother on when Solo came out, and he was a hardcore EU fan, and he was really into the Solo novels that you're talking. He came on and really broke down all the Easter eggs that were in the Solo novels that came into the films and stuff, and he just had a fantastic attitude. Like he loved the EU, and he was really disappointed when it wasn't canon. But he would just sort of said, I love that. That was great. And now they're just sort of picking bits and putting it in where they can. And to think that there isn't respect and love for the EU by Lucasfilm is ridiculous. I think they're just trying to cherry pick or find the bits that work.
Oh yeah. Well, even Qi'ra. I mean, Han's love interest in the A.C. Crispin novels was a woman named Bria, and she is kind of like she's like an addict at one point. Like she has a very dicey past, a very dicey story. Her death is actually really, really Rogue One-esque. But yeah, so I do think that they definitely take things from the EU and put them where they belong. But overall, some of the storytelling in the EU, like I liked those books when I was 8. They weren't exactly like, like they're not amazing. No,
some of it's great, but a lot of it's not.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think that's just to wrap up, that's Star Wars in a nutshell.
Right.
Some of it's great.
Yeah.
And a lot of it's not. Well, actually, a lot of it's great and some of it's not. And it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks for coming on, Tracy. This has been really great.
Yeah, it's such a blast.
I'm glad that you got to get on the mic and talk a bit of Star Wars again, and hopefully when your new podcast comes out soon, people get to hear a bit more on the regular and stuff as well. But did you have anything that you wanted to plug? Did you want to plug your social medias or anything like that? Or
yeah, so I'm Feminist Nerd on Twitter. I'm usually yelling about Star Wars or talking about my weird culture shocks in Australia, being an expat, and that's where you can find me.
Awesome. All right, well, thanks for coming on, and hopefully we'll get you on again in the future when we've got some more juicy things to talk about, maybe some more Carrie episode 9 where we know what happens with her and stuff. Well, hopefully it won't be that long, but thanks for being here, and we'll speak soon.
Yeah, cheers. Thanks for having me.
Okay, bye.